Hello, family. Greetings. This is Dr. Kia Pruitt. It is Monday, October the 17th, 2022, and the time is 12 o'clock noon. Greetings. I hope you all are doing well and having a wonderful week so far. I'm so happy to see you all. Over the weekend, we've had discussions on some of my social media platform about trust creations, and estate planning. So people have asked me, what is estate planning? And estate planning is generally involves being very proactive about how you manage your assets and protect your assets. And one of the best ways to do that is through a trust. A trust is a living document that must be signed and notarized, which holds and manages your assets. Now, most people are familiar with a prenuptial agreement or they're familiar with a will. A will just determines or expresses the wishes of a person upon their death, but a trust, is something that actually manages and holds your assets while you're living and in the event of your death. So the difference between a will and a trust is that a will must first go through probate court, whereby an attorney or the court makes a decision on how your assets are distributed. Now, just because you state in the will where you want where or how you want your assets to be distributed does not mean that's what happens. So a will can be contested, and any fees that are associated with the will going through probate comes directly out of your estate. And each time your will is contested by your living survivors, then there are fees associated with it. And those fees, again, come out of your estate. So imagine expressing in your will that you desire for certain assets to be distributed in a certain way, and that doesn't happen. Now, you might not know about it upon your death or from the grave, but your children do, and your wife and or your spouse, if you're a woman, and your family members, and they have to go through that stress of having the will go through probate and having attorneys make sure they're paid first out of your estate. And that's just a very stressful way to live when we can be more proactive and place our assets in trust. So a lot of you hold currencies, exotic currencies. You might have precious metals, you may have a home, you have a car, some of you have businesses, you have life insurance policies. What else do you have? Any assets you have, even the clothes on your back or your jewelry, those are all considered part of your estate. So we all have an estate. The best thing to do for that is to put your assets in trust. So you can manage your assets from the grave, actually, and or while you're living. You don't have to be rich to do this, because I know typically we think of trust fund babies as people who are rich, but trust fund babies are just people who are paid from the trust, because the trust is a living entity. It is its own entity. Recall that Rockefeller said, own nothing, control everything. So when you put your assets in trust, you don't own them, but you manage them or control them. The trust own your assets. So this is why I say it's important for people to own a trust. Now, a lot of people get upset with me when I tell men to develop trust, but I actually tell men and women, you must have a trust if you want your family members to be protected upon your death, and or if you desire to protect yourself and live in the private. But the reason why I have had some of these conversations with men is because a lot of men are not worried about marriage, they're worried about divorce, because in divorce, oftentimes the court plays an adversarial role against the between the man and the woman and pit them against each other, and tries to encourage the woman to take as much as she can from, excuse me, baby, from the man. And that's not in all cases, but I mean in some cases. And then in a lot, and you know, you do want to take care of your wife if you separate or if you die, and you want to take care of your children. But my point is, if you are a sovereign being and you are proactive, you begin with the end in mind, and you find a way to live in the private as a sovereign person who has control over his or her life. You don't need the courts, actually, to determine what happens with your assets. Not as sovereign beings, you take those type of fiduciary responsibilities into your own hands. And in actuality, I've learned you don't even have to go to a court for a marriage license, because a marriage license actually involves the state in your business. So now the marriage is actually between you, your spouse, your prospective spouse, and the state. And that's why the state determines what happens with your marriage and with your children. So what was I gonna say? Hey babe, my grandchildren are trying to get my attention. So what you can do, and what some people do if they don't want the courts involved in their lives, and I don't have a problem with marriage license, actually. I've had a marriage license, but you can do a private ceremony and then draw up some type of agreement between you and your companion and have that recorded. So you have it recorded in, I think people record it in, is it the clerk's office? But you have that recorded. You have witnesses. You can even have witnesses to sign it or notarize it, and have it notarized, excuse me. And that can be something binding between you and your family, or you and your spouse. But let's get back to a trust. There are very many trusts. Two very, I would say, popular trusts would be your revocable trust, and those are trusts that can be modified or changed, or your irrevocable trust, and those are trusts that cannot be changed because you have determined while you're in your sound mind how assets are being managed and distributed. Another thing I'd like to discuss is that the reason why some people get prenuptial agreements is because, you know, they may have had assets prior to their marriage, whether you're a man or a woman. And that's good to be proactive, and if you desire to have a prenuptial agreement to protect your assets. I don't know why people have a problem with people desiring to protect their assets. If you have a problem with a person wanting you to sign a prenuptial agreement, then to me that speaks more to your motives or your ignorance in terms of how people ought to be responsible with their money and the things that they have acquired. Having said that, your trust can serve actually as what they call, I think it's called an undesigned prenuptial agreement. So it is a prenuptial agreement because it's an agreement that if we split or divorce for whatever reasons, because people sometimes just come to an understanding or understanding that the marital agreement or contract needs to be dissolved, then if you have that ahead of time and you have it in writing in a trust, then the spouse will only get what you decided. For example, you may say, if we part ways, I will take care of you 3 months, a year, or I will take care of you for the rest of your life, even up to this amount of money, or until or unless you remarry. That sounds fair to me, but it's not up to me to decide. That is between you and, I guess, whomever you are trying to leave an inheritance for. But if you do it before marriage, then that's really determined by you. It's determined by you. And if you've acquired assets before marriage, why wouldn't you want to protect that, woman or man? Now, what I've learned as a trust advisor is that oftentimes when we women fall in love, child, we fall in love, and we fall in love hard. And oftentimes we don't protect ourselves. You know, I'm not saying all the times, but we just fall all in love and we just give it all away. We'll let the man move in with us and not have a trust. And if you let a man move in with you, what's the matter? And you haven't, Be careful. You let the man move in with you and you haven't set up a trust and first, and say something happens to you, you transition or you pass away, you might have intended for your house to go to your children, but unless that is determined in a trust, the man has homesteading rights, and so he can stay in that home forever if he chooses, or vice versa. If you're a woman, the man can stay in the home forever, and that asset does not have to transfer over to your children. So we need to start being wise and be proactive. Begin with the end in mind. Be responsible adults. A lot of times we're acting on emotion, what feels good, what feels right at a certain time, and then we wish we can retract those statements or decisions that we made while we were being emotional. But again, sovereign means sov over, reign, control, or rule. You have reign and rule and control over your life. Let's be proactive and have reign and rule and control over our lives. Now, again, the revocable trust is something you could change or modify. The irrevocable trust is something that you do not change or modify. If you already have a trust in place prior to marriage and then you get married, you can add what they call it, like a different section, a clause in your trust to modify it. So it doesn't have to be etched in stone, but it is very wise to have one. This is just a brief video to talk about what a trust is and why you need one. So whether you have a business, a car, a jewelry, money, an insurance policy, anything that you have, those assets can be put into trust. And then you don't want to have a lot of things in one trust. You want to make sure that certain things like your automobile has its own trust, because if somebody finds out that, let's say you have a car accident and they find out that your trust is owned by you and they go after your trust to sue the trust, but you have all these other assets within the trust, then it looks like, you have a lot of money for the taking. So you want to be wise and make sure you talk to a trust advisor or somebody who is educated in trust creation and protect your particular or specific assets. Another thing about trust is you can have total anonymity. You can be totally anonymous. How about that? And nobody has to know that you own the trust. So there are ways where you can write up the trust so that nobody knows it's you. And so all of your assets are protected. And this is how you live in the private and manage or control everything, but not own it. This is how the rich live. This is the secret of the rich. People don't know this. They don't understand that the rich know how to protect themselves, the wealthy rather, and the smart people, because actually a lot of rich people don't know about trust creations. Even attorneys don't know about it. So they talk about wills and prenuptial agreements and contracts, but a trust trumps all of that. Okay, because again, a will does not determine what happens to your assets. If I pass on today and I say I desire for my grandchildren to have a certain amount of things, my children might say, well, I don't like that. That's my mama. Okay, the grandchildren should get something, but I should get more. They can contest that. And then the fees that are associated with that will be taken out of my estate if I only have a will in place. Also, if you have a will and you just leave your wife everything, you might not be thinking about how she would distribute those assets to your children. Or you, as a woman, you might be married and you have a will, but just because your will stipulates that your children should get something, don't mean that it will happen. Neither does it mean that the husband will distribute those assets upon your death. Okay, because a lot of times, if you have a blended family and those children do not belong to your spouse and you pass, what I've seen is that most things go to the spouse and the children are left fighting. Even adult children are left fighting and crying because they don't know that their father left them anything, or they don't really know how to contest it. Don't put your family in that predicament. Protect your children. Even your adult children deserve something, because the scripture says a good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. That's his posterity. A good man, a good woman leaves an inheritance for not only her children, but her or his posterity, her or his future generations. The second part of that is the wealth of the wicked is stored up for the righteous. So a lot of these people in power have taken over our trust, made themselves the administration of our trust that were created at birth, made themselves over our children and have taken our children through CPS. But we have to learn how to take back control. Now, the good thing and the good news is that because the deep state is being taken down and our republics are being restored, all of those things that they took from us now will be returned back to us. So the wealth of the wicked is stored up for the righteous. It also, scripture also says, the meek shall inherit the earth. So many of us were considered meek. You know, we were submissive to these people. We were slaves to these people in power. But now it's our turn. We're going to inherit the wealth that they stole away from us. In the meantime, family, protect yourself. Put your assets in trust. And if you're not comfortable with doing that, since a lot of trusts are actually associated with an EIN, which means that they are connected to the IRS. If you're not comfortable with that, then you can look into common law trust. You can look for trust advisors who operate outside of the system, and I'll see if I can tag my friend Taj, who works on that. But if you want to protect your assets within a system that we do have, just to be sure, because it is still in operation officially, then let me know in the comment section that you're interested, that you would like to set up an appointment with a trust advisor. Send me your email, put your email in the comment, and I will direct you to someone who has been doing that for many years, or we can have a conversation. So again, this is just a brief discussion about trust creation, and estate planning. People who are in control of their families, people who are the leaders or the head of their household, whether you're a man or a woman, you need to take action and be proactive and protect your assets for the sake of you and your posterity. My name is Dr. Kia Pruitt. I hope I've said something to raise your vibrations and to help you to manifest and materialize the wonderful, beautiful, amazing reality that you so greatly desire and deserve. Peace, family. Make this a beautiful day. Mwah. Talk to you soon. Bye.